So many messages from Ryan Reynolds have finally been unredacted. I hope you've been watching our coverage of all these unredacted emails and documents that have been coming in. They're all very important because it's finally giving us a real picture of things.
For years, Ryan Reynolds has been Hollywood's untouchable nice guy, the witty, self-deprecating marketing genius who seemingly can do no wrong. But the unsealing of a massive cache of private text messages has finally pulled back the curtain on a side of Reynolds the public was never meant to see. As the legal battle surrounding It Ends With Us intensifies, these unredacted documents expose a high-stakes campaign of intimidation, manipulation, and power tripping that goes far beyond just having his wife's back. The texts reveal a man who wasn't just a supportive husband to Blake Lively, but a shadow director and PR strategist who was willing to leverage his entire industry weight to crush anyone standing in the way of their narrative. If you thought the drama was just between Blake and Justin Baldoni, these receipts prove that Ryan Reynolds was the one holding the match while the bridges burned.
Rats, I tried to warn Blake on the red flags, but was hoping he had gotten better. I'm on a shoot right now. Want me to call you after? Sure. Zero pressure. We could chat tomorrow. And sigh. Ugh, I'm sorry, Ryan. Working on his set was truly one of the worst days of my life, but it's survivable and I'll help. Call me anytime tomorrow. Even she's not like making it sound that bad, that they just don't like him. I think that's really the vibe I get from a lot of it. But let's get into it. Okay, so now Ryan is emailing or messaging Josh Greenstein, who's like head of Sony at the time. I mean, Garfield, congrats to you and your gang of merry Mad Max murderers over there, because I guess Garfield had beat Fury Road at the Mad Max Furiosa, rather, at the box office. Incredible. I'm not rooting for any movies to lose because we all take the hit, but you really pulled off a marketing triumph with this. That Garfield beat Furiosa? Yeah, you're gross, Ryan. And marketing is my favorite discipline of all the martial arts. I hope I get the benefit of your black belt one of these days soon.
The digital trail begins with a revealing look at how Ryan Reynolds operates within the Hollywood executive suite, specifically his relationship with Sony leadership. In a series of messages to Josh Greenstein, the head of Sony, Reynolds employs a tactic that can only be described as strategic love bombing. He gushes over Greenstein's integrity and leadership, calling marketing his favorite discipline of all the martial arts. This isn't just friendly banter. It's a calculated effort to align himself with the decision-makers who controlled the fate of It Ends With Us. By positioning himself as an ally and a fan of Greenstein's work, Reynolds was securing a backstop for the version of the film he and Blake wanted the world to see. However, the moment the conversation shifts away from the executives, the tone turns venomously sharp. While he's praising Sony's integrity to their faces, he's privately trashing the production's internal dynamics to anyone who will listen. The texts show he was obsessed with ensuring Blake's cut of the movie was the one that made it to theaters, despite reports that Baldoni's version was testing better with audiences. Reynolds wasn't just offering creative notes. He was using his celebrity status to ensure that Sony felt a personal debt to him. He explicitly tells Greenstein that he has a lifelong supply of admiration and friendship from the Reynolds camp, effectively turning a professional collaboration into a personal loyalty test. This loyalty was quickly weaponized against Justin Baldoni. Reynolds describes Baldoni in the text as genuinely touched in some very strange ways, even going as far as to suggest a melon baller lobotomy would make more sense than Baldoni's actions. The contrast between his professional nice guy persona and this level of vitriol is staggering. It reveals a man who uses charm as a shield while privately executing character assassinations against his wife's creative rivals. The texts prove that Reynolds wasn't just a bystander. He was the primary architect of the Baldoni as a villain narrative long before the public heard a word about it. For viewers, the most alarming part of these early messages is the sheer level of control Reynolds sought to exert. He wasn't just defending Blake. He was attempting to manage Sony's entire corporate response to the internal friction. By framing the dispute as a matter of integrity versus malignant stupidity, he left no room for nuance or professional disagreement. He made it clear to Sony that if they wanted to stay in the Ryan Reynolds business, they had to choose his wife's side unequivocally. This wasn't a creative partnership. It was a hostile takeover masked by martial arts marketing.
Well, it's actually funny you say that, Ryan, because that actually proved that Ange, head of Sony, said that she was shocked by that meeting. She was not only shocked by that meeting, but she acknowledged that you screamed at Justin.
As the production moved into its final phases, The texts reveal Reynolds escalating his rhetoric to a level that can only be described as nuclear. In communications with agents and managers, he stops referring to Baldoni as a mere creative nuisance and starts labeling him a thoroughbred predatory fraudster. He demands that Baldoni should be writing 15-page apology letters to Blake and the rest of the crew, despite there being no public evidence of the attacks Reynolds claimed were happening. This wasn't just a husband being protective. It was a powerful mogul attempting to dictate the terms of another professional's career and reputation. The irony of Reynolds calling someone else Trumpy while simultaneously attempting to label and destroy them is a pattern that many analysts find disturbing. In the texts, he argues that Baldoni is the one practicing malignant stupidity. Yet it is Reynolds who is seen coordinating with agents to enlist Baldoni's own representation against him. He explicitly states that he wants to prescribe options for how Baldoni should behave, suggesting a level of entitlement to control others that is rarely seen outside of the most extreme Hollywood power struggles. He even brings up Blake's history of working with abusive people, like Oliver Stone, claiming that even those experiences didn't reach the vile heights of working with Baldoni. This comparison to Oliver Stone is particularly telling, as it shows Reynolds is willing to burn bridges with other industry legends, just to make his current point feel more weighty. He frames the situation as a character study of malignant darkness, using hyperbolic language to ensure that anyone reading the texts feels they are dealing with a monster rather than a colleague. The goal was to isolate Baldoni so completely that no one in the industry would dare stand up for him. Reynolds even mentions that Blake would soon stop protecting Baldoni from the rest of the cast, a threat that implies he was the one holding back a tide of resentment that he himself was fueling. Yet, when we look at the other cast members, the narrative doesn't quite hold up. The texts show Reynolds pressuring people like Jenny Slate and Colleen Hoover to fall in line, even though many of them clearly wanted nothing to do with a public legal battle. He speaks for these women as if they are his own property, claiming they won't be in the same room as Baldoni, when in reality, many were simply trying to navigate a messy production without losing their jobs. Reynolds' insistence on being the diplomatic and solution-oriented one is contradicted by his own words, which are filled with rage and a demand for total submission.
You can sort of feel the Baldoni stuff coming to a head online. Twitter and TikTok are inexplicably blaming Blake at the moment, but I can't imagine details won't come out. Threat, because Baldoni and Jamie Heath offended, harassed, or violated too many people. Still waiting for those people to come forward, by the way. And the internet is obviously looking for answers and obviously seeing how every cast member and the key crew, including Colleen, won't be in the same room as the guy. All of them have at some point over the last 6 months unfollowed him on social media. Your wife literally told them to, for the record. Not one person has said Justin's name out loud in any interview at any time, probably because they're terrified of you. At what point did Justin and Jamie not take a moment to step into the light and say, maybe it's us? I can't even the audacity of Ryan writing this. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's you, bro. Maybe it's you, Tim Miller, TJ Miller. I mean, you have your own list of people that don't like you. Scarlett Johansson. There's more, Ryan, and you know it. You're just pushing your power and your name to force everybody in your orbit to follow in line and hate Justin at all costs and to ruin his life.
When the public narrative didn't immediately swing in Blake's favor, Reynolds turned his sights on Sony executives, labeling them laughably impotent and meek. He was particularly enraged that they would suggest Blake roll over and lie by releasing a neutral statement about creative differences. To Reynolds, a neutral statement was a betrayal. He demanded that Sony aggressively implement steps to protect Blake, essentially asking the studio to act as her personal PR firm and attack their own director. The texts show a man who has zero respect for the institutional boundaries of a major movie studio. He goes on to mock veteran producers like Todd Black and Amy Pascal, calling them textbook ineffectual elderly people with no ideas. This ageist and dismissive rhetoric reveals the level of disdain Reynolds holds for anyone who doesn't immediately validate his wife's perspective. He views himself as the only one with the spine to handle the situation, despite the fact that his solution was to ignite a global media firestorm. He even suggests that the studio was threading the needle because they were afraid of Baldoni, rather than recognizing that they were simply trying to protect their investment. The most revealing part of this section is how Reynolds admits to masterminding the marketing and promo plan himself. He claims Blake willed the weekend into reality, while the studio sat on their hands. This contradicts the official narrative that Sony's marketing team was responsible for the film's success. Reynolds was effectively taking credit for the wins while blaming the studio for the backlash caused by Blake's own tone-deaf interviews. He frames the marketing of her hair care line during a domestic violence movie as something the studio should have defended, rather than something they should have cautioned her against. By the time the texts reach August, Reynolds is in a state of full-blown rage. He admits to his agents that he feels depleted and exhausted by the lack of solidarity from WME and Sony. He treats the entire industry as a battlefield, where he is the general and everyone else is an expendable soldier. His demand for an unqualified, unreserved, full-throated apology from Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and the entire production team shows a man who is no longer interested in the truth, but in a total victory that includes the public shaming of his enemies. He was no longer trying to save a movie. He was trying to save an ego.
Scrapping and frame effing dailies for every square inch of quality. She slammed together a recipe for success despite working with ingredients she wasn't even able to choose. All this while masterminding a world-class marketing and promo plan for a movie that's punching so far above its weight, I've lost scripters to even describe what's happening. So, I'm sorry, who's the boss here again? Who's the employee and who's the employer? And I thought Sony was responsible for the marketing. But no, you just admitted in text, it's all Blake. She willed this weekend into reality. Baldoni and those other buckets of dum-dum juice should be acknowledging the speculation and gossip themselves. They should be jumping out in front of it and in the most full-throated, unqualified way now. They should be protecting Blake. They can and should accept the consequences of their action and lean into the countless. And I can't keep going. There's so much and there's more to get to. You can pause and read this.
One of the most disturbing revelations in the unredacted documents is how Reynolds attempted to weaponize the female cast members of It Ends With Us. He repeatedly pressures his agents to get Jenny Slate and Isabella Ferrer to join in the apology demands, despite clear indications that they wanted to remain neutral. He frames his own aggressive stance as protecting women, yet the texts show him speaking over those very women to satisfy his own sense of justice. He even mocks Baldoni's performative feminism, while he himself is practicing a form of protective patriarchy that leaves no room for the women's actual opinions. When the internet began to push back against Blake Lively's promotional style, Reynolds didn't look inward. Instead, he claimed that the backlash was the work of thousands of bots hired by Baldoni's crisis team. He calls the social media reaction gross and untrue, refusing to acknowledge that real people were genuinely put off by the way the film was being handled. This bot narrative is a classic tactic used by powerful figures to dismiss legitimate criticism. By labeling the public as non-human, Reynolds could maintain the delusion that he and Blake were the ultimate victims of a coordinated attack, rather than the authors of their own PR disaster. The texts show him coordinating with the Daily Mail and other tabloids to leak specific marketing quotes that would paint Baldoni as the problem. He wasn't just reacting to the news, he was trying to be the news. He mentions that nothing shuts people up like a victory, showing that he believed the box office success of the film would act as a moral shield for their behavior. To Reynolds, money and metrics were the ultimate proof of being right. If the movie made money, then the truth was whatever he said it was, and anyone who quibbled about the how was just a human rounding error. Perhaps the most hypocritical moment in the entire cache is when Reynolds is caught writing messages as Blake Lively. The documents show a tweet draft that Reynolds sent to his agents, written in the first person as if it were Blake describing a dozen incidents of being creepy. This level of ghostwriting suggests that the Lively Reynolds brand is a single homogenized unit where the boundaries of individual experience are blurred for the sake of a PR goal. It's a chilling look at how a human masterclass in branding can turn a personal struggle into a coordinated corporate strike.
And then look at this. This is all spin and we'll let it burn. How'd that work out for Depp? Here's Ryan now calling out Johnny Depp. What a scumbag. Not well, cratered for both of them ultimately. That's why he's an egotistical shitweasel with a god complex. Leslie should definitely engage the studio and fight back in any way necessary, but I think we just stay quiet, let Baldoni do his thing. Probably best to not get lost in the comments section. Yeah, wish you would have taken that advice. I understand the industry has a Twitter and the gossip crowd, but nothing shuts people up like a victory. Millions of people will see and talk about and be affected by this film this weekend. A film Blake strongly authored. Let them effing quibble about how strongly. Let that human rounding error Baldoni play his little game. This is a giant-ass victory. Congrats. But no, will it? If we ever need to, Blake will go on the record and explain it. Working with was like the most plain language possible. So let's see how that goes. So fast forward a couple days. That was written on the 9th. Here we go on the 12th. I appreciate you guys taking time to hear me out. I know I sound angry, but I promise I have way more rage in the tank. I just feel depleted and exhausted. And as they say, keep away from the dying animal. Wow. I can't act and won't sit by watching my wife, who's been asked to shapeshift around a problematic man since the very beginning of this movie, complete a grand slam home run only to be dragged through the mud while people ring the shame bell behind her. And besides me and her, nobody seems willing to have an uncomfortable conversation on her behalf or my behalf. I've spent too many hours trying to reason and negotiate a way through this, at a minimum neutralize the situation, and at best advocate for the truth to be told, when the truth should in reality be the only thing we advocate for. The truth or your truth, Ryan?
As the situation reached its breaking point, Reynolds' texts become increasingly desperate and threatening. He tells his agents to keep away from the dying animal, referring to Baldoni's career, and warns that he won't sit by while his wife is dragged through the mud. He puts immense pressure on WME, his own agency, to pick a side between him and Baldoni, despite both being clients. He demands solidarity and a duty of care, which in Hollywood terms means fire him or you lose me. The level of professional intimidation here is unprecedented for a star of his stature. He even begins to coordinate with Ari Emanuel, the head of WME, to go full Ari on the head of Sony. He wanted to use every bit of leverage he had to force the studio into a public statement that explicitly blamed Baldoni for the dumb horror show of a production. Reynolds' rage was no longer about the movie. It was about the fact that he couldn't control the Twitter and gossip crowd. He was exhausted by the unforced errors Blake had made in her interviews, yet he blamed the studio and the director for not protecting her from her own words. He was a man who wanted all the credit for the success and none of the responsibility for the fallout. The final irony is revealed in an email Reynolds sent to Baldoni earlier in the production, which was also part of the leak. In that message, Reynolds love bombs Baldoni, calling him a wonderful collaborator and a stand-up person. This email, it turns out, was sent purely to manipulate the shooting schedule so Reynolds could see his kids. It shows that from day one, his kindness was a tool for negotiation, not a genuine reflection of his feelings. The moment the schedule was secured and the movie was in the can, that stand-up person became a malignant sociopath in Reynolds' eyes. The texts conclude with a sense of war. Reynolds tells his team that we are at war and that he has way more rage in the tank. This wasn't a creative disagreement. It was a total scorched earth campaign. He was willing to burn down the reputation of everyone involved, from the director to the studio heads to the assistant directors, just to ensure that Blake Lively walked away as a proud recipient of a grand slam home run. The documents show that in the world of Ryan Reynolds, the only truth that matters is the one that keeps the brand on top, regardless of who gets crushed in the process. The exposure of these texts marks a definitive shift in how we view the Reynolds-Lively empire. It reveals that the witty, charming exterior we see on social media is often a thin veneer covering a much more aggressive and controlling industry presence. Ryan Reynolds wasn't just a husband standing up for his wife. He was a power player using every tool of intimidation at his disposal to rewrite the history of a troubled production. As the industry moves forward, these unredacted messages serve as a cautionary tale about the reality of Hollywood power dynamics. It leaves us with one final, uncomfortable question. When we see a celebrity victory, how much of it is earned, and how much of it is simply the result of a war that was fought in the shadows of a private text thread?